It's time for the most anticipated part of today's kickoff, the challenge presentations by a few of my colleagues in states, government, and our partners. This year, there are 5 challenges you will have the opportunity to solve, or you can propose an open challenge. If you know of a challenge that you are facing, can obtain data such as from data.hawaii.gov. Please send your idea to the HACC Planning Committee, and they will let you know if you can work on your idea for this event. First challenge being presented today is by Brandon Lee from the Hawaii Department of Education. Modernization and replace the Hawaii's Department of Education's current legislation tracking software methods. This tool will obtain real-time information on DOE impacted legislative measures, notify offices and personnel of their assigned measures, and manage testimony workflows. That would be for Brent.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brandon Lee. I'm with the Department of Education, and I'm excited to be presenting our legislative bill tracker program that we are asking a lot of you to come help us with. So I am the legislative coordinator with the Department of Education. I've been there about 3 years. And so the Department of Education really does a lot of different things, which we'll talk about. So first of all, I just want to say, we are the largest department in the state. We have a $2.1 billion budget. We educate about 171,000 students, and we employ almost 50,000 people across 294 public schools. And so it's a pretty big department to get your head around. We have everything from a facilities office to an IT office to a budget office to a curriculum office. To a student support services office. I mean, it's like running its own city, to be honest. But with that, obviously funding is a huge thing for the Department of Education. I mean, we can't operate without money. And so managing that process is a huge endeavor for us. And so one thing I'd really like to point out is that the legislature is very, very important in terms of dictating what the department can and cannot do, through the laws that they pass. They say, hey, DOE, you need to provide this program. Hey, DOE, you can only fund this amount of teachers in the classroom because this is all we can afford. And so it's something that relationship between us and the legislature is huge. Because of that, it's from our back end workflow process, it's something that we need to manage particularly well. And I would say most importantly, the legislature dictates 5 of every $6 that comes to the department. So if I were to do this presentation a decade ago, it would actually only be about 3 in every 4. And so it's actually growing in importance. The Department of Education is heavily reliant upon the state legislature for everything from your teacher salaries to books to your sports programs. I mean, everything you think about when you think of schools. And so in politics, an organized minority is a political majority. And so we are one of many groups, both government as well as private sector, that is asking the legislature for things. And if we're not organized, we're not going to be able to get the things that we want. And so this is a pretty big thing for the Department of Education to get right. So I'm going to play you about a 3-minute video that kind of covers basically how a bill becomes a law. And so you'll see it's pretty complicated, but here we go.
All laws start out as bills. Bills can be an idea for a new law or a proposal to change an existing one. The legislature votes to pass a bill, and the governor signs it into law. Sounds simple, right? In reality, the journey from bill to law is anything but straightforward. Here is how it works. Although only legislators can introduce a bill, the bills they introduce can be influenced by the governor, special interest groups, and by us, the constituents they serve. Let's say I feel very strongly about bike safety and think all bike lanes in Hawaii should be painted red for better visibility. For this idea to become a law, I'll need a member of either the House or the Senate to sponsor it. He or she will write up the bill and introduce it to their legislative chamber. The progress of all bills can be tracked on the state's website. Bills introduced in the Senate have the abbreviation SB as part of their name. Bills originating in the House have HB. Let's say I get a senator on board with my bike lane bill, and she introduces it to her fellow senators. Senate leadership then refers it to a specialized committee. In this case, my bike lane bill will be referred to the Senate Transportation Committee. The Transportation Committee chair decides if it should get a public hearing. If not, my bill dies. If it gets a hearing, the public weighs in and the committee can decide if it wants to make changes, pass it, or defer it, which keeps the bill from moving forward. A majority of the committee must agree on a version of the bill before it can move on. Once my bike bill is approved by the committee, it's then presented to the full 25-member Senate, where they can pass my bill as is, make more changes, or vote to kill it entirely. If my bike bill gets the majority vote in the Senate, it goes to the opposite chamber, the House of Representatives, for review. The process then repeats on the House side. If no changes are made, the House can approve it and send it straight to the governor for a signature. If the House decides to make changes, for example, they want bikes painted blue instead of red, the bill must go back to the Senate for approval. If the House and Senate don't agree, the bill goes to a conference committee made up of members from both the Senate and the House. If lawmakers still can't agree, the bill dies. If they agree on an amended final version, it goes back to each chamber for final votes. The governor can also veto a bill, but the legislature can override that veto if 2/3 of lawmakers agree. Most bills that are introduced at the beginning of session never become law. In a recent 2-year session, almost 5,000 bills were introduced, and only 437 became law. Want to learn more? Check out these links.
Okay, so obviously there was a lot of moving parts to that video, but that is something that the department has to manage. Usually we have about 500 bills or so that we're tracking all at the same time. And so logistically, it's a pretty big thing for us to do. And we use this, what we call the Lotus Notes program, to manage all of that. So the challenge for you to solve today is we need a new legislative tracking program to replace this Lotus Notes program, which was developed, I'm not even sure when, in the 80s, 90s. The other thing is our IT Lotus Notes expert is going to retire in the next couple of years. And so it's something that's going to be very important for us to get onto a new system. Like I said, the program allows the department to be organized in knowing exactly when we talk amongst ourselves, what is it that we want to say about this particular measure, and then how is it that we then get all that information on paper such that when we submit our testimony to the legislature, you know, it's kind of our viewpoint as to what is it that that we feel that the legislature should or shouldn't do. And then without this program, I mean, you know, this is both policy, this is both make sure we have our budget down. You know, without that, educational policy and our fiscal situation is going to suffer, which ultimately puts challenges on our teachers as well as our students going forward. So I just wanted to give you a couple of screenshots of what the current Lotus Notes program looks like. On the left-hand side, it's kind of this column with all these different folders that kind of organizes the different bills. So when you click, say, superintendent folder, all bills by bill number, in the meat of the program, it gives you the list of all of the bills that we pulled out and said, yes, this is something to do with the Department of Education. So here's the full list. And then when you click one of these bills, it then takes you to this screen, which is kind of the full picture for that bill. So it scrapes the data from the state capitol website and it puts out, you know, the bill number, the introducer, what the bill's about. And then we kind of populate it with things like which office it's assigned to. There's a workflow process in here, which I'll get to in a little bit. And then ultimately at the end, when we're done, we put in the final version of the testimony into this section. And so it's both an automated as well as a manual process, but it's something that when you have a lot of people, you know, 200 and something people in the state office trying to talk to each other to navigate this particular strategy, how is it that we can do it best in an organized means? So just internally for the department, a bill comes out, we want to testify on it. A secretary in one of the assigned offices will assign it to a subject matter expert. That writer is usually the person who drafts the testimony, of which then they send it to an office approver, which is usually an assistant superintendent. They review the testimony. Then they send it to the policy office, which is PIPE, which is where I'm located, which we will then review it again. And then we send it up to the superintendent's office to get his approval. And then from that point, the superintendent kicks it back to the secretaries to then submit it to the testimony. And so there's both a content portion of it, which we're writing what we want to write, but there's also a workflow process, which we need to get a much better visualization about in terms of all of the steps that we need to do within potentially as short as a 24-hour time period for that particular measure. And so just another screenshot of just when someone clicks through the difference. So if the writer will click route for office review, that takes it to their boss. That person then clicks at the route to pipe, which is when we get it. And so as you can see, like it's sort of a workflow thing. It sort of flows down and the people should know where they are within the system. But it's one of those that this is a pretty clunky and old program. And so anything that you guys can help with modernizing, that would be really helpful. And so finally, our solution. We need a new ledge tracker program. What it needs to do is it needs to track and organize scrape data from the Hawaii State Capitol website. It needs to have a sort of a workflow process, as well as notifications and sort of email correspondence between about 200 and 250 department employees. There needs to be multi-layers of approvals and access within this program. And ultimately, make it modern, be very creative in terms of designing this program to look and feel like a 21st century program that it really should be. And really, you guys can be part of the solution here. The children of Hawaii are very, very important. That's why we do what we do. And if you can help take a greater role in that, that would be very, very helpful. So with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, everybody.